June 16th of every year is globally recognized as the Day of the African Child. It was first established by the Organization of African Unity in 1991. The day aims at raising awareness about the situation of children in Nigeria and on the greater need for improvement in education. It also seeks to encourage a spirit of abundance to share something special with a child in Africa. In Nigeria, the drive towards literacy, poverty alleviation for the child is seen as a welcome development in planning for the future. And as the world prepares to adjust to the new normal post-COVID-19, analysts say the African child needs greater encouragement through impartation of education and skills acquisition, and of course, sustained government program focused on the eradication of poverty. So joining us now from the United Kingdom to look at all of this is Chimanma Rushworth-Moore, the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Goldfish Initiative for Literacy and Poverty Alleviation, a non-governmental organization that caters to the needs of Nigerian children through the promotion of education and poverty alleviation. Welcome to the program. I just want to take you on this. How can we truly alleviate the sufferings, both emotionally and socially, of children when the Child Rights Act has not been domesticated in most states of the Federation?
Firstly, I must say thank you for having me. It's an opportunity for me to actually, bring out the cries of what's been going on in Africa, using Nigeria as a focus point. Most of us, who've been abroad, who've lived abroad for a long time, will know we have a social system. This doesn't exist in Nigeria. So there's so many things that are happening. Children who do not go to school, children who get raped and they make it a hush situation, children who are molested, children who are killed. It's a sad situation. So I'm actually very happy because this Day of the African Child is been like a door opening to say for people to actually look at what are we talking about? How has this come about? Basically, it's come about from the struggle of the average African child, especially people who live in rural areas. They are the voiceless. So I'm hoping that people will come up, stand up for these children, beautiful children, intelligent children who have been left basically on their own with their parents who probably have next to nothing. So we need to stand up. If we're building Africa and we're not building our children, this is a recipe for disaster. And we really need to look at the African child and look at them very, 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 very well.
Well, very good points there. The theme chosen by the African Union for this year, 2020 Day of the African Child, is access to a child-friendly justice system. Now, what are the challenges that children face with regard to the justice system in Africa, and particularly in Nigeria? If you could just help us define that.
Firstly, there is no continuity most of the time when somebody, for example, is raped. There is a major situation happening now. You put on the television, someone's been raped there, a child's been raped there, children as little as 6 months old. It's a shame, really. So with the justice system, I think we can do a little bit more. There is no pronounced sentence of if you rape a child, you're going to be, you're going to face life imprisonment or something. People actually brag about, I think I watched a video recently of a guy who was bragging about how he raped a 12-year-old. He said it wasn't rape now, she was there and she was wanting it. Things like that. So, disgraceful for people to even think it's all right to do things like that. Our justice system, we actually need to step up. Let there be some sort of continuity. Let it be out there. Each one tell one. It is not all right to rape a child. Even a 17-year-old is a child. And we need to look at these things and the effects that it will have. If one rapes somebody, you actually take away your life. It's as good as killing the person. For some people, they never become the same again. Let's take, for instance, the case that happened. I think a couple of years ago, Ochenya Wanje, the girl from Benue State, who was raped. And it was between the father and the son or something.
Yes, her uncle and her cousin raped her repeatedly.
Exactly. And people were living around this child. So the big question is, away from even the justice system, the people, were they not aware that this girl was withdrawn? Were they not aware that things were happening to this innocent child who only wanted to be educated, and that was how she came to live with maybe an uncle or relative and stuff like that. A lot of children go through this on a daily basis. We do not have to wait for them to die before we actually look at it and say, oh my God, this is so bad. People took to the streets because it's a bad thing. Now, I don't know what change that has brought, because there's still rape cases of people raping children, and it's happening every day. They want to be educated. The average African child using Nigeria as a contact point, very intelligent, very beautiful children. So when they cut their life short by either not sending them to school and the government not using the justice system per se, is not doing anything, maybe they're doing something, but they're not doing enough. I'm sorry, but that's the truth, So because if we actually look at it and say, this has got to stop, and everybody is joining hands to want to make this stop, there will be fewer rape cases, if at all.
Absolutely. There's so many backward religious and cultural practices that inform our relationships with children. But now I want to talk to you about education. The Day of the African Child has its origins in the events of June 1976, when Black South African students, children, took to the streets to protest their low quality of education, which was legislated that way in apartheid South Africa. The white children got a decent quality of education and the black children did not. When it was enough for the black children, they took to the streets and they were shot dead in their hundreds. And that led to the Soweto uprising. This is what we're commemorating today. And it leads me to the next question about the COVID-19 pandemic and the poor quality of education so many of our children have to contend with, exacerbated by the fact that children are not going to school to even get those meager lessons that they used to manage to be able to. Now they get no instruction. Since March, when schools closed, millions of Nigerian children have not had a single lesson. They have not done any schoolwork whatsoever. What are we looking at in terms of the short and long-term effects of this kind of gap? Whereas their secondary school contemporaries, private school contemporaries are being homeschooled. Life is going on, well, not quite as normal, but as close to normal as possible for them. So our poor children, the lower income side of things, with already so many disadvantages stacked against them, have this to contend with. The inequality is widening, it's not narrowing.
Right, okay. With the question you've asked, is widening, of course. Who do we have to blame? Let's leave the government aside for a bit. What's happening to the community? Africa, one of the things we're very proud of is they say a child is owned by the community and not just by the mother and the father. What are the people in the community doing? They're not doing much. We're gradually moving into an age where people, each one mind your business and do things like that. I believe that in this pandemic situation, there could be people who would come together and say, okay, fine, this is a mango tree. We live in a village. Let's gather and teach these people, maintaining social distancing. But everybody is so busy doing one thing or the other that education is something that's it's almost becoming second place. And we need to scream this at the roof from the rooftops, telling people, if you educate a child, you change a lot of things. You give them the opportunity. Take, for instance, this COVID-19 thing when it started. I was thinking hard and I thought to myself, what can we do? I'm here, I run a charity in Africa, in Nigeria. What can we do to even educate the children? Because we play together in Africa. We roll in the sand, do all sorts of things, just like any other child anywhere in the world. So basically, when I thought of that, I said, okay, fine. What we can do is, first of all, educate them the reason why they should stay indoors. We did a couple of states. It's not easy going around, especially during this season. And this is what I expect people to do. At a situation where things are hard, the poor people, especially the children and the grassroots, are going to always be poor if the people around them don't help. Because if we're waiting for the government to come and do some things, it may take some time. It may never happen. We need to be honest with ourselves. I'm hoping that people who are in the communities should be, some sort of guardians to other people as well. That would really help the situation. It will help if people can come in, in communities how they do like local watch, like how I think they do like a patrol thing where people are conscious of their security because it's not so great in some places. Why can't they do that with children who are living in their communities, under the watchful eye of someone they can trust or people they can trust, and they can even shift this to teach ABC 1, 2, 3. It's not that difficult. I can assure you. In fact, it will be fun because these children are just sitting at home, especially those in the villages. They don't have access to television. They don't have access to electricity. They don't have access to many things. If we go down that route, it's just gonna make us really sad. They don't have access to anything, and if the people who can read and write and do the ABC and the 1, 2, 3 can step in, maybe the government might be inspired. We're waiting for the government to inspire us. We should inspire the people. Perhaps the government might look in and say, okay, fine, let's come in. How can we help these people? So it's a bit of between a rock and a hard place here because we have so many children out of school. And these children are going to grow up and they're going to be angry. And they're going to be angry at us.
Okay.
We're not building a fantastic community.
Right. We have 10 seconds to a quick break, but I just want to ask you this. We've got 13.5, if my stats serve me right, 13.5 million children out of schools. We've got a big issue of our marginal children in the north. What has your organization done as regards this? We'll come back after the break and talk some more. Right, we still have Chimanma Rushworth-Moore, Chief Executive Officer and founder, Goldfish Initiative for Literacy and Poverty Alleviation, non-governmental organization. So as I was saying, I said we've got 13.5 million children, pupils out of school, and also the Al-Majri Challenge. What has your NGO done as regards this?
The Al-Majri children. So some years back, I had been studying about the Al-Majri children. I heard about what our former president, Goodluck Jonathan, had built some schools for them. I had never been to Kano State. I was quite intrigued. I wanted to see things for myself. So when I came back from England, I wanted to go. I was actually discouraged. People said they're going to get kidnapped and, that they were hostile and unfriendly and stuff like that. So I decided to go nevertheless. And when I got there, I was trying to find out statistics. Sadly, nobody in Nigeria knows how many Al-Majri children we have. We have loads of them. There's not a number because it's sad to know that I don't even think people actually, or the government cares for these people. It's steeped in culture and tradition. When I got there, my charity, it was very difficult to gather them in the first place. So I decided to have lunch with them. So, and because obviously I don't live in Nigeria, I had to get some local women who served food, and they all came together, they clustered, they were coming, and I sat them down and I wanted to find out, firstly, before you help a situation, or you find out, or you go deep into it, you find out what exactly is the psyche of this person or these people. So I sat down and I was trying to find out, and I asked them, what would you like to be when you grow up? Most of them were saying, soldier, soldier, I want to be soldier, I want to be soldier. And I was wondering why. Now, that's because these children, in the first place, have looked at the average man wearing a uniform, and they think that they can be powerful by wearing a uniform. Now, the people as well that they've seen maybe have gone to NDA, passed through international war school in Jaji, and they have a certain rank. Now, these people cannot read. These children can't read. They can't write. Some of them as old as 18. And they would want to be a man someday. They want to marry. They want to have a home. And then when, unfortunately, maybe someone gives them a uniform, because they're illiterate, they might not actually know that you need to go to a certain kind of school to be this man. So they might fall into the wrong hands, for example, Boko Haram, and that becomes a situation. So for my charity, when I got there, I realized that the first thing that I went there to for education was not going to be possible. They need to be rehabilitated. So I had to go back to the drawing board. Because if they need to be rehabilitated, where are we going to start from? Because people, when you go and you speak to them, they're not even listening in the first place. they're fighting for one thing or the other, and these children have been left to go from, begging. People say it's part of the culture, but I've never seen a rich Hausa man's child begging for or being an almajiri. So I'm wondering, is this for the poor people? Is this how they want them to be? When you ask the average Nigerian child, intelligent children, they have hopes of being everything from being the first Nigerian on the moon to being anything else. But the opportunity is not there, especially with funding as well. If you go to those governors and you tell them, they might promise you things, they might not do it. We can only help a certain people at a time. So after that visit, I must tell you, I haven't been back to Kano State, because the big question now for me is, how do I rehabilitate these people? How do I come into their culture and tell them they need to stop this? So it's a matter of national, security, because these children are going to grow up angry, and we're going to go back to square one. So that brings us to the justice system. If there was a proper justice system in place where no child should be caught begging on the streets, if you're an adult, you're 21, and you choose to beg, by all means, if that's what you want to do, no one is going to stop you. But if you're a child and you're still in your formative years, and the person who's giving you food and a roof over your head tells you you need to beg to be who you want to be, then we have a problem. But how do we address a religious situation? How do we address the mindset of these people? How do we tell them that education is not the enemy, it is the friend? So we stuck in between a rock and a hard place. Because even me as a woman going into that territory, at some point they started speaking in the language, and the person who came with me told me, "Madam, you have to leave now." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Just get into the bus and leave now." So for me, it's a situation that I can't handle alone. And it's a situation that even one governor can't handle alone. They need to come together, as a group of people, as a group of governors, people who we've trusted to rule us, to say this has got to stop. It's as good as rape when you actually lie to a child and tell them, okay, if you beg, you become better, when your children are not begging. So we have that problem in Africa, and God help us all.
Well, very good points there. You're right, it takes a village to raise a child, but at the same time, the government also has an important role to play in terms of the political will, the leadership that is necessary, and also the enforcement of the laws. Take the UBEC law. There's a section of it that criminalizes parents that do not send their children to school. That would be the responsibility of government to make sure that those children who are abandoned get justice. But please, could you tell us a little bit more about your NGO? How did you come about the idea? What was the motivation? And how do you manage to run the NGO here in Nigeria while you are based in the United Kingdom? And what are the special challenges that you have faced, apart from the one or two that you had alluded to?
Okay, basically the NGO has been, it's about 4 years now. We've been to about 19 states in Nigeria. We do funding for children education, send people back to school programs as much as we can. We provide reading and writing materials, uniforms, books, socks, biros, pencils, etc. How did it start? I've always wanted to give back to my society. I'm not a rich woman, obviously, but we can all give back to our society. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. I didn't always grow up with plenty. And I grew up in a place where I actually sat in class with these people who didn't wear shoes. And I was always saying to myself, if I can escape, I can help some other people escape as well. So when I started, I actually was re-educated, because the first place I ever went to was Pashali School for the Blind. And when I got there, I discovered that I went there with the normal things that people go with. I went there with rice, indomie, and stuff like that. So when I dropped it for the people, they were happy. But a blind boy came to me and he tapped at me, and I asked him, he called me auntie. I said, "How do you know I'm the one?" He said, "I can smell you." And the woman, the Reverend Mother that was there, was saying, "Oh, they're very, very sensitive with their smells." And he told me, "I would like to read books." I felt so stupid. I said, "Really?" He said, yes, I want books. I want Braille. I want to read stories. I want to understand the world. I want to see the world. And and I sat back and I said to myself, here's me bringing packets of Indomie and Capri Sun and tissue and stuff like that, when I should be giving them books to make them, to set their minds free. And that changed my mind. And I said, if this boy can tell me this, what about other people? What about the other people in other states? And then I started, and obviously going from one to the other. I live in the UK. I've been here for years and years. I work in a bank, so I keep a 9-to-5 job, but I still bring out a certain amount of, for most of my holidays, instead of me to go to Paris or maybe America, I come back to Nigeria. I try to make it 3 times a year. And it's spread because there are people who actually see what I'm trying to achieve. So I have volunteers across all the 19 states, over 500 people. We do an annual walk to raise awareness of the African child education being, like what you need is to see the big frontier. So I always canvass for that, for the poorest in our society, basically. I hope that one day it spreads to Ghana, to Burundi, because if Nigeria can do it, Burundi can do it. If Burundi can do it, Ghana can do it. If Ghana can do it, Cameroon can do it. If Cameroon can do it, Lesotho and the rest of all African countries can do it. I want a situation where they know that education is a human right. It's not a privilege. So the rich, the poor, the middle, it's something that everybody should key into. If our children are educated, they are knowledgeable, they would know even who to vote for.
Thank you very much, Chimanma. Great delight having you with us this morning. And I understand you studied at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ilefe, before you relocated. Thank you.